Satnam, yogis and yoginis, hello and welcome to the chapter review number 3. Well, it will be kind of weird because for the first and second chapters of the Yoga Sutras, we have been seeing every sutra individually, and then we do a summary of all of them. But as I mentioned, for the chapters 3 and 4, I'm going to be very brief on them. And this today is going to be the whole chapter. So we're going to cover the whole chapter 3, which is a lot, but I'm going to summarize a lot of it and just give the key points, the most important elements of that. And hopefully, maybe next week we will do chapter 4, and that will conclude this course that we have been going on for a while. And it's been an incredible journey through the Yoga Sutras. And next year we start with something else, something new. We start with a different topic. And I'm streaming at slightly different times these weeks. It's getting close to Christmas, and I have my daughters around me, and it's kind of difficult to organize myself to make the streams at exactly the same time. So I apologize for that. But I will keep doing videos, and I will until the week before the week of Christmas. Then I will take some holidays off. Anyway, chapter 3, let's go for that. So chapter 3 is called Vibhuti, and it's translated like accomplishments, what you accomplish out of your practice. The second chapter was your practice. So the first one was giving us the idea of going towards Samadhi, Samadhipada, then Sadhanapada was the practice. Now Vibhutipada is about on your practice, what sort of things are going to manifest, what's going to happen. So that you can be ready for that and know how to deal with whatever happens. And we're going to start from the way we finished on chapter 2, which, if you remember, that we have the 8 steps of yoga, of Ashtanga Yoga, the 8 steps, and that was the yamas, niyamas, asana, pranayama, pratyahara, and then we stop there. So the chapter 3 starts straight away from dharana, and it's the last 3: dharana, dhyana, samadhi. And I'm gonna put a little. I'm gonna do a page just like the others we did. I'll remind you, this is the summary we did for chapter 1. If you wanna see, if you wanna remember how it was chapter 1, you can just watch the video for that summary. Or if you wanna watch an individual video for a particular topic, you can go to that. We have also one for chapter 2. Now chapter 3 is going to be a bit different because we don't have a set of videos like the other times, but I'm going to group it according to the sutras so that it can also be helpful in guiding you. If you want to study more in depth that particular sutra, you can go to any translation that you may have and check it out for yourself. So chapter 3, this is Vibhuti. Vibhutipada, which is the accomplishments, and starts from sutra number 1 is talking about dharana. The second is dhyana, and the third is samadhi. And we have already talked extensively on these 3 aspects. Just remember, dharana is concentration. When we are focusing the mind, we're fixing it on an object. Dhyana would be when the awareness is uninterrupted, so you're not concentrated, but you are fully concentrated, you are stable at the center of awareness on that object. And samadhi, when you get into absorption into that object and the consciousness merges. So I want to give a little example. I don't know if I mentioned it on the first time we were talking about these steps and the first time we talked about samadhi. I may have talked about it. If so, well, you will hear it twice. It's a little story on a little experience that I had when I was living in Scotland. I was doing my university PhD, and I had some friends that we would go for dinner every Friday, and we would cook all sorts of beautiful food. It was particularly my Italian friends were lovely. They had an incredible ability to cook a different pasta dish every week, which was lovely. And so anyway, there was this one day we were having a conversation, and one of them and I were like, I would like to do some exercise, and we talked about doing it together so that we could motivate each other to do it. And we said, well, why don't we try swimming? Let's go to the swimming pool and see how it goes. And the swimming pool was quite far, so we had to walk like half an hour. And they said, yeah, let's do it. Okay, when are we going to do it? Let's do it tomorrow. Well, yeah, let's do it tomorrow. And we were getting excited on this. And these friends, flatmates, is like, well, don't count me in. You know, it was already past midnight, and we wanted to go very early, like 7:30 or something like that. Leave the flat to be early at the pool. I was like, well, don't wake me up. And they said, well, it's okay, don't worry, I will not wake you up. But so you're not coming? No, I'm not coming. Okay, but she is coming. You know, her flatmate. I said, let's meet. She said, okay, but in order not to make any noise, when you arrive home, just knock on the door rather than ring the bell, because I will be aware and I will listen for the knocking and then I will come out. If you ring the bell, the whole house is going to be, the bell is quite noisy. So, okay, next morning, very early, wake up, sleepy, but okay, let's go. And I was walking towards her house, and I was in my head like, don't wake her neighbor, her flatmate, don't ring the bell, don't ring the bell, don't ring the bell, don't ring the bell. Which is kind of funny because it's kind of like a mantra. It was like I was going over and over and over in my mind, don't ring the bell, don't ring the bell, don't ring the bell, don't ring the bell. And I'm not going to ring the bell. I was for sure not going to ring the bell. And so I'm walking down the street and I get to her house. And this is beautiful, in Scotland, these beautiful houses, and the stairs are from the outside. They go around like this, and then you come into the front door to ring the bell, or, in this case, I wanted to knock on the door. And so I take these little stairs, and as I turn to face the door, right at that very instant, the sun is rising. That very instant, the sun is starting to rise, and there's this amazing sunrise, beautiful sunrise. There's these yellows and oranges, but very, very colored, a lot of very colorful, beautiful. And I was like, wow. And I was there, totally immersed with the sunrise. It wasn't really like any kind of spiritual enlightenment or anything like that. It wasn't that, but it was like fully immersed in the sunrise. It was like the sunrise and I are one. This kind of samadhi, union in that sense, like we are one. Wow, and I was there for some time, a few minutes, like, wow. And then I turn to the door and I ring the bell. So I was like the whole journey, don't ring the bell, don't ring the bell, don't ring the bell, right? And I lose myself into the sunrise. And then I go and ring the bell. And then, of course, the door opens, and my friend is like, what happened? I didn't hear your knocking, And yeah, I woke her friend. Well, she was also my friend. I woke her up. But what I wanted to mention with this story is that there's different kinds of samadhi. And when they say samadhi as an absorption, and when you see the description in the books, when it talks about the seer and the seen become one, so you become one with the object of meditation. I remember asking about this experience to a yoga teacher. He's a yoga therapy teacher, and he explained to me, yes, the object and you become one, but which one? He said, you or the object? Because when I did have that experience with the sunrise, it was a beautiful moment. It was a moment of, wow, incredible sense of awe, right? And beauty, and my heart opening. But I lost myself in it. So I wasn't holding my awareness of what's happening. And the proof is that as soon as I came out, I forgot that I had to knock on the door. So that's not the samadhi that we want to. Yeah, the samadhi that we want is one in which we merge with the object, but we remain aware. So the object and I become one, but I am there. I am in that awareness. That is the one that is there. Okay, so this was kind of a little story to explain that little subtle point about retaining our awareness in that merging. Well, okay, so Patanjali tells us these three in Sutras 4 to 6. He says these three are called samyama. This is called samyama. And samyama is going to bring insight. Yeah, when you are practicing these three, dharana, dhyana, and samadhi, on some object, yeah, to reach this absorption into the object, this is going to bring some sort of insight, or how does he call it? Pragya. Pragya awakens, he says. It's like jnana, like knowledge. Some knowledge, some insight is going to awake gradually. And you're going to receive some sort of knowledge, some wisdom out of what you are observing. And he says, look, if you pay attention in the following sutras, he says, if you look at yamas, niyamas, all the way to pratyahara, he said this is all kind of an external work. While if you look from dharana, these three, yeah? These three. Dharana, dhyana to samadhi, it's internal. So when you are doing dharana, dhyana, samadhi, it's an internal work, and yet, Sutra 8 tells us that even if it's internal, comparing it to the experience of nirvijja samadhi, which is the final state of samadhi. We talked about there being many different states of samadhi, and this is the one without seed, where there is liberation, kaivalya. So compared nirvijja samadhi with this samadhi that we are experiencing in the samyama, then comparing it, this samyama is external. So what this means is that when we are doing yamas, niyamas, asana, pranayama, this is like an external thing we do in the world. Now, when we start going dharana, dhyana, samadhi, already feels internal, but this is not compared. You cannot compare this internal to the actual experience of nirvijja samadhi. When you get to nirvijja samadhi, that's really internal, and then anything else in comparison to that state was external. Anything else was outside. So, because when you go to nirvijja samadhi, you go to the innermost layer of being, to the real self in the deepest. When we talk about self-knowledge and finally self-realization and liberation, that's the core of the being. So in nirvijja samadhi, everything else will feel external compared to that state. So this is what he's telling us. And then he tells us also that on our path to this, there's going to be a number of states that happen in the mind. 9 and 10 is going to be different states of the mind. He calls it parinama. Nam is, parinama? Yeah. Okay. Am I writing it right? Yeah. And he calls it nirodha. He calls in the 11, he calls this samadhi. And in the 12, he calls this ekagra. Parinama. Whoop, I forgot the I. Parinama, the I. And this is different states that happen in the mind, from distracted into nirodha. Nirodha is when the waves cease, and then we become focused. When this focus becomes effortless, that's the samadhi state. And finally, in ekagra, this is fully one-pointed. Yeah, different states of the mind. And through these different states of the mind, then this is going to create a transformation of our senses, our indriyas, you remember? And this is kind of going to be similar to what happens in the elements. The tattvas, from gross to subtle. Yes? Okay. So that's all the way to 13. Now, you'll see that I'm already occupying a big piece of the page, and you will be worrying, Ardaas, you're going to run out of page. Now I'm going to really contract things. And the following sutras, Patanjali is going to go into a lot of detail of what happens when you do samyama, dharana, dhyana, samadhi, on which object. And he says, well, when you do samyama on that, this is what's going to happen. When you do on that, this is what's going to happen. When you do on that, this is what's going to happen. And, this is what can happen more than what's going to happen. And that can happen, that's in relation to the siddhis, these powers, these vibhutis that can occur. So it was going to be a big list. I actually did a whole list for myself, going line by line, and exploring every one of them. And I will read it so that we have read, we have touched upon all of it, but I'm not going to write all of it because it would be too big for this page. It would clutter too much. It would feel too much. But what you could do, if you wish, going through every one of the sutras, you could go now in a number of lines, and you could say, well, when we do samyama on something, then we obtain something, yeah? And you could do a line. And I will do a few as an example, and then the rest I'm just going to say it, and we're going to group them all together. Yeah. So let's say number sutras 14 to 16, he says, when we do samyama on the object, on an object, and we observed how it's changing, the changes in an object, in form and time and state, there's a number of things. What we can obtain is the knowledge on the past, the present, and the future regarding that object. Past, present, and future. If we do a samyama, this is Sutra 17, when we do samyama on the name, should change the color, name of an object, we understand. By the way, when we do the samyama on the name of an object, we perceive three things. One thing is the name that we use for the object. Another thing is the object itself. And another thing is the concept that it represents, the idea that is associated to that object. And what we obtain out of this would be, I wanted to do it with another color. We understand the language of any living being. So it seems, you could understand the language of birds and any animal. And if we go on, let's do a few more. If we do samyama on previous thought waves, like vritis, we can obtain knowledge of past lives. Past lives. And I will summarize from 19 to 30 something. Let's see. Okay, I will read the followings. Yeah. When you do samyama onto someone's body, so when you focus your dharana, dhyana, samadhi, when you are capable of entering this state and you are looking at somebody's body, then you understand, you read the quality of their mind, not the let's say the content of the mind, but the quality of the mind, which is kind of like saying you can read body language, yeah, but you do it intuitively. It's not like you learn a set of rules. When the person is doing that, you know what's happening in their mind, but intuitively, you know what's happening in the quality of their mind. When you are doing samyama on your own body, you are invisible. You are capable of invisibility. And now, before I carry on, you can take this literally, because certainly there's plenty of stories in India of fascinating things, on amazing stories of things that happened, and they may be hard to believe, but it's also, when you read many of these, you are like, there has to be some truth to this. It cannot be just a metaphor. But for example, Mas Murray was telling me once that he was in the underground in London, and he was dressed as a yogi, and there was a group of some guys who were, I think they were kind of like neo-Nazis kind of stuff, and they were looking for trouble. So as they went in, they were looking around to try to mess up with people. And if you were a little bit different, they were not shouting, but verbally abusive to that person. And he saw them as they went in through that door in the other side of the carriage, and they were walking in his direction. So as he sat there and he closed his eyes and he started repeating I don't know if it was the Mahamrityunjaya mantra, I think it was one of these, or either this one or another, like Gayatri or something like that. And he started repeating the mantra very, very strongly within. And these guys came, picking up on everyone they could find, and they completely left him alone. They just didn't see him, and they carried on. And he knew for sure he was going to get in trouble, because these guys were looking for trouble, and he was dressed as a yogi, and with the orange clothes and the hair and so on. So he became invisible in a way. So you can take it like that it's kind of invisible, or maybe you can even take it literally. So I'm not going to make that judgment, but I'm going to just read what it says, and then you decide how you want to take it. So when you do samyama on your own body, you have the capacity to remain invisible when you don't want to be seen. When you do samyama on the sound that you do, you can be noiseless, completely noiseless. When you do samyama on the kinds of karma, then you can perceive the time of your death. When you do samyama on the friendliness, compassion, and happiness, so if you take these virtues as your focus of your meditation, then you awaken and blossom these qualities within you. When you do samyama on elephants, you gain their strength. When you do samyama on your inner light, you know different realms of this universe. When you do samyama on the sun, then you know... on the inner light, I did it the other way around. When you do samyama on the inner light, which is like light is like seeing, you have the capacity for remote viewing, seeing things that are hidden and far away. When you do samyama on the sun, you have the knowledge of the realms of the universe. When you do samyama on the moon, you know how the stars arrange and how they move. When you do samyama on the North Star, you understand how they move. Yeah, in the moon is arrangement, and on the North Star is how they move. Samyama on the navel, you have knowledge of the functionings of the body, the organs, and the different aspects of your body and how they all function together. When you do samyama on the pit of the throat, you stop having hunger and thirst. When you do it on Kurmanadi, which is below the throat pit, you attain steiryam, which is a concept that we talked about in another video, when you are capable of being absolutely mobile. Like in meditation, you try to be absolutely mobile no matter what, and you don't move the body. So that capacity. When you do samyama on the light at the crown of the head, crown chakra, then you may have an intuitive knowledge and see siddhas, see perfected beings. So you can have a vision of perfected beings. when you do samyama on the heart, you may understand chitta. And when you do samyama on pure consciousness, you have a knowledge of Purusha. Knowledge of Purusha. So let me write this one here. Yeah, as we get to 36, 37, and it says when you make samyama on pure consciousness, you obtain the knowledge of Purusha and supernatural senses. So you remember that senses are linked to pratyahara. When we are bringing the senses in and we are making them more subtle, our senses, our indriyas, may perceive in a more subtle quality. Well, as you refine that through samyama, they may become even supernatural. Like clairvoyant, clairaudience, like seeing different, being able to see the different energy bodies, like the aura, and perceive sounds from the spheres, from the other spheres, things like that. Now, after all this, he makes a little break, and in the 38, let's do like this, separate a little bit. On the 38, he says, well, all these experiences, these are obstacles to samadhi. But for the person who is having a worldly existence, for the person who lives in the world with worldly affairs, they may feel like powers. So this feels like powers to the worldly person. So one who has worldly affairs, as they are receiving these things that you are obtaining, they are going to feel like powers. This is the concept of cities. Yeah, we call them cities. Let's write it here. Right? Okay. Then he goes back and he says, there's a number of things that when you do samyama on something, or you gain mastery over something, what do you obtain? For example, in 39, he says, when you are mastering the capacity to lose your attachments, then you can enter another's body. And then we could carry on, but let me stop here for a second. What does it mean, enter someone's body? There is a lovely story in this book, I think it was. Let me see. Yeah, let me read it. I'm going to read from this book, How to Know God, which is one of the books I have been referring to. Well, I haven't really referred to in the videos. I haven't talked about this one. This is by Swami Prabhavananda and Christopher Isherwood. We did have, when we were looking at the big book, at the big unadorned thread of yoga, we have here the translation from Prabhavananda, but this little book, which is quite lovely, goes into some stories as well. It doesn't just give the translation, but it also gives it elaborates a little bit the translation. So there's a little story here on the 39. So let me read it. This recalls a story that is told by Shankara. When Shankara was still a boy in his teens, there was a philosopher named Mandan Misra who held that the life of the householder was far superior to that of the monk, an opinion which was widely shared throughout India. Shankara determined to hold a debate with Misra, knowing that if he could convert him, he could also convert Misra's many disciples. After considerable difficulties, he succeeded in making Misra agree to this. It was understood that Shankara, if he lost, should become a householder, and that Misra, if he lost, should become a monk. And at Shankara's suggestion, Misra's wife Bharati, herself a famous scholar, acted as umpire. Now I have to say, this is back then when the ascetic path was much more revered than the householder's path. Yeah. So out of Shankara there would be a lot of formal development of the Swami path, the path of the Swamis, and it would be become quite popular. After a debate of several days, Misra was ready to admit total defeat. But Bharati said to Shankara, Bharati is the wife, if you remember. Wait, she said, husband and wife are one person. You have only defeated half of us. Now you must debate with me. You may know all about philosophy, but I choose another subject. I choose sex. It is a great science. Before you can claim either of us as your disciples, you will have to debate with me and defeat me on that. For the moment, Shankara was baffled. As a monk and a mere boy, he knew nothing whatever about sex. However, a plan occurred to him. He asked for a month's delay, and this Bharati granted. At this time, it so happened that a king named Amaraka lay dying. Shankara told his disciples to hide his own body in a safe place and take great care of it. Then, by yoga power, and here when it says yoga power, I'm referring exactly to the one that is Sutra 39, which is we were just reading. By yoga power, he left his body and entered the newly dead body of the king. Amaraka apparently revived the king and continued to rule the kingdom under the guidance of Sankara. Now, Shankara Amaraka proved to be a brilliant and just ruler, winning the admiration of all. But Amaraka's two wives soon realized that something extraordinary had happened, for the new Amaraka not only showed astonishingly youthful energy, but he seemed as ignorant of sexual love as a baby. Meanwhile, the preoccupations of kingship and domestic life began to cloud Shankara's mind. He began to forget what he had done, why he had done it, and even who he was. He began to believe that he really was Amaraka and not Shankara. Shankara's disciples learned of this, and since monks were not admitted to the court, they disguised themselves as wandering musicians, and so came into his presence. Then they began to sing the poem called Mohamudgaram, the shattering of delusion, which Shankara himself had composed. Beloved, strange are the world's ways and vast thy ignorance. Who is thy wife and who thy son? Whose art thou? From what plane come hence? Ponder this in thy heart and bow to God in reverence. The words recalled Shankara to awareness of his own identity. The body of the king Amaraka fell dead to the ground as Shankara left it and returned to his own body. Later, when Shankara appeared at Misra's house, Bharati knew at once what it was that he had done, for she also possessed some yoga powers, and she admitted defeat without further debate. That's kind of a funny story, but this is the thing about reading yogic stories, because this concept of a yogi leaving his own body and going into somebody else's is not uncommon. I've heard about this a few times. There is this, how are they called? I always forget their name. One branch of yogis who meditate on death. Now they are not coming to my mind. But yeah, there's a weird sect of yogis who meditate on corpses, and they do all sorts of weird things, and they are said to have this power as well. Now, can you imagine if it's already hard to deal with the memories that we have from this lifetime in, remembering everything that we have done, and sometimes we feel regret and shame of the things we did that are hard to forgive ourselves. It's difficult to forgive ourselves for some things. Imagine if you were able to, rather than die and empty your mind and be born in a new body, if you were able to now move to another body and then move to another body, and then move to another, continue existing from body to body like that, you could live hundreds of years. But can you imagine holding the awareness of everything you have done? How difficult, how it could be like a prison, your own mind. So, again, these powers that may come, yeah, I believe it's possible. I think it is like that. But what is the implication of that? And that could be incredibly tough. But anyway, this is some of the cities that come. And again, you can take it as you wish. So we were saying that this is like samyama, or mastery over something. Losing attachment gives you this power. There's more of them. There is, if you master udana, which is the vayu that is up here in the head, and it rises, the energy, you gain the power of levitation. If you master samana, the vayu around the middle of the body, when you master it, you gain radiance. When you master the relationship between the ear and the ether, you gain divine hearing. The mastery between body and the ether, you can do astral traveling. The mastery about vritis, these waves that are outside your body, so from the outside, they come from the outside, they make so that the veil in your prakasha disappears. And mastery over the gross and the subtle elements, it gives you mastery over them. And then you have, there's like 8 cities attached to this mastery over the elements in your body. You can become very small or very big or very light or very heavy, things like that. Perfection of body can be through the beauty, the grace, the strength, and heart, like a diamond. And then through mastery through samyama of your perception, action, and I-ness, asmita, you get mastery over your indriyas, and it gives you the mastery over prakriti as well. And then you realize that there is a sattvic quality to your mind, sattvic guna, the sattvic buddhi of your mind. Even that one is different from purusha. But by realizing this, how is that? You by mastering this distinction between your sattvic guna of your mind and purusha, the siddhi is omniscience and omnipotence. I mean, that's can he go any higher, right? Patanjali. All right, let's write this last one, going all the way from 39. We are now in the 50, I think it is. So by samyama on the distinction from the sattva in the mind, like buddhi, and the purusha, he claims that this gives you omniscience and omnipotence. All right, and with this, he kind of finishes the list of cities that you obtain, and he says, well, that's a lot of stuff, a lot of cities, and let's go now to the 51. Let's go like this. In the 51, he says, look, if you are going to experience any of these cities, and you are capable of practicing vairagya. Do you remember vairagya from the chapter 1? When we are not attached to something. So if you practice vairagya to the cities, the outcome of this is that the bij get destroyed. You will remember this bija, these seeds were connected to the seeds of karma stored in the samskaras. And this is what makes us reincarnate. So by destroying these seeds, we are coming into nirbija samadhi. We are getting close to that, and liberation, final liberation, which is the outcome of the whole chapter 3. The chapter 4 is about kaivalya, that liberation. So we are getting very close. It's very few sutras now. So we are getting the bija are getting destroyed, and this liberation is getting very close. Now, as it gets close, you may receive an invitation from, what did he say? Was it Siddhas? No, celestial beings, yeah. And here comes one last warning. Watch out. Don't be proud or even happy that it comes. Yeah? Not proud. Because if you are proud the moment that they come, the pride brings you all the way down, and then you have to work it up again. You have to get up again. So even at this very last moment, as the bijas get destroyed and the door to the celestial realm opens and you get invited, be careful that the pride does not come in. If the pride comes in, then that's a sign you have to work and you go back. But if you do carry on, then 53 tells us about by the samyama in this moment of time, then the viveka is reached. You remember the full power of discernment, the knowledge of discernment, discriminative perception, and then this viveka, which is intuitive and transcendent, allows you to see that any two things, no matter how similar, they are not the same. And finally, on the 55, if you remember, in the 50, we said that there is a distinction between the sattvic guna of the mind and purusha. He says, well, when you get to this point, then the sattvic buddhi, so the most pure aspect of your mind, becomes as pure, let's say as pure, I don't know how to write anymore. There we go. As pure as the self, Purusha. When this happens, then we have reached Kaivalya. The true liberation, the final liberation, the absolute liberation. So that means no more karmas, no more seeds, and you are free from having to come back. So this was all pointing to Kaivalya. Chapter 4 of the Yoga Sutras will be Kaivalya Pada, the path of Kaivalya, and it will review, I will come back to the concept of Samadhi and different state of Samadhi. It's a much shorter chapter. We will also cover it in one video in the next time. But here we have this overview. Yeah. So basically there is these three aspects are samyama, and doing it on a number of things is going to create a number of siddhis or powers, and the mind is going to go through a process of refinement. Don't get attached to this. They are an obstacle. Yeah, they are an obstacles to the samadhi. And if you get through and you receive this invitation, don't be proud and receive the viveka, this discernment. That's the way to the path to Kaivalya. Wow, that was a whole chapter in less than an hour. That was quite incredible and quite intense. It was intense preparing it as well. When I was taking my notes, I had to do notes and then refine the notes and then summarize my notes to get to this level. But yeah, hopefully it was useful, and I think we are getting very close to the end of this beautiful course on the Yoga Sutras. We will enjoy the end on the next video. But for now, thank you very much everyone for watching. Thank you for liking the video and sharing it and subscribing to the channel, and for the members for your support as well. And until next week, thank you very much. Sadam.